What's going on, guys? I'm up here Saturday morning working on the single cab and figured I hadn't done an update in a while. Thought it might be a good time, so just got finished recharging the AC system on it. When I was trying to get the electric fan swapped over to the Holley, had an issue where I popped off the high pressure relief valve on the back of the compressor because the fan wasn't running and had the AC on. I was trying to diag why it wouldn't come on with the AC, which I'll get into that in a second. But we got all that sorted out. Got my AC functioning again. That's a necessity here in Florida. Race car, street car, doesn't matter. So glad to have that working. But since my last update on the suspension, really been focusing on updating some of the electronics that I wanted to incorporate and some of the Holley EFI features I wanted to utilize. So got boost control live. I'll show you the inside in a minute, but I've got just a standard 3-port MAC valve configured to where it's going to swap from compressor pressure to the bottom of the wastegate to putting in the same amount on the top side. That's the configuration I have, so hopefully we'll be able to see maybe 12 or 14 psi with this setup. I've got it on a trim pot, dial a boost type of setup on the inside so that I can go from just standard wastegate pressure up to maximum boost control duty cycle depending on where the position of the trim pot switch is. So I'll show you that in a second. So got that set up. I got the E-fans swapped over to Holley EFI. I wanted to run those off the Pro Dash. I think I mentioned that in the last video, but I wasn't able to get it to function the way that I wanted. Getting them to work on the Pro Dash wasn't a problem, but getting one of them to trigger automatically when the AC was running just wouldn't work for me. I'm thinking that maybe the current Pro Dash feature suite for automated outputs only allows you to trigger things based upon sensor values and not necessarily switched inputs. So I could get the AC kick to register on the Pro Dash, but it would not trigger the fans even though the status met the predefined parameters that I put in there. So what I ended up doing to circumvent that is I put one of the fans on the native outputs for the Terminator X that I'm running, and I put the second fan on the Pro Dash. So I built a little, I've been calling this a bus board, but technically it's a like a terminal strip setup. But I've got all of the native Terminator X inputs and outputs on this left side. And then I added the expansion module so that I can get some more inputs and outputs because I'm trying to get some temperature senders on the truck. At the moment, we got oil temp, and the oil temp sending unit that I'm using actually has a pressure gauge in it too. So I got 2 oil pressure setups. I might as well pin that in. So I put both of those in there. I'm also going to do trans temp, diff temp, and power steering fluid temp. Those are going to all be going on there. I also got a coolant pressure sensor, so most of my remaining positions here will be filled. The first 6 of the inputs and the first 6 of the outputs are on this part of the terminal strip, and then kept it modular and accessible from the outside. The remaining 3 inputs and outputs are accessible from the back side. And then that is kind of just some future proofing there, another terminal strip if I needed to pin out sensor grounds or something like that. So got that in there. I'm happy with how that came out. The expansion module, everything's a mess in here because I'm still working on it, but the expansion module is down underneath the cup holder setup. So if I ever needed to access that, you just pop the cup holder out. All of that's wired and loomed. Comes up the center console, wraps around on the back side of the dash here, and comes up and feeds in. Can't really see it on the video, but trying to keep all this clean, trying to keep it organized. Started making labels for the heat shrink so that if I'm ever in the field, I don't have to like try to find my diagrams that I make. I can sort of make adjustments as needed. So obviously the Achilles heel of the Terminator X system is its limited native inputs and outputs. And when I say native, that means that there are features in the Holley EFI software that allow you to automatically configure certain inputs and outputs. Some examples of that are like AC kick, AC shutdown, fan control, secondary fuel pump control, 2-step, and then boost control, obviously. So my boost control isn't using the native features because I set it up just raw duty cycle on a trim pot switch, but it is still using the native inputs and outputs because they have a quicker response rate than the expansion module that has to communicate over CAN. So I'm almost loaded out there. I've got one left that's open, and it is actually occupied. That input number 3 is going to be to trigger the 2-step. I just don't have it wired. I haven't had a need for it, but we'll get that done here shortly. So let me go over to the other side, show you what we got going on over there. Also used one of the mil-spec twist lock bulkhead connectors to bring all of this new wiring through. You can see it down there. Really nice setup. I used Maven. I like their mounts. They make some really nice products, so I use theirs on this particular build, but there are a couple of companies that make that, so nice way to keep things modular. Everything underneath the hood that I've been doing is all set up with like DT connectors so that it all can come apart and go back together without cutting wires and splicing it. Again, my goal in all of this is try to keep it all modular so that it can be changed, updated, and modified at any time without extensive rewiring. So all of that's coming out nice and clean. I had some social media updates on this, but I'll hit it real quick on the video. So underneath the steering column is where I mounted kind of my distribution panel set up for most of my EFI and my Pro Dash. So it brings in battery power and ground to one of these leash boards. This allows you to pin out switched outputs, fixed 12-volt outputs, and you've got a grounding strip there for everything. You can put in fuses. It's all relay controlled, key on. Everything works really nice, and that makes a simple way to keep things really clean and clutter free, and gives me a good source to pick up power, ground, key on ignition, and everything else. So all of the bottom terminals here are Pro Dash inputs and outputs. Obviously the Pro Dash has a ton of features, so there's like 13 native IO, well, not IO, they're inputs. There's 13 native inputs, there's 4 switched outputs, and a couple of other features I can't remember. I think that they're like ground inputs or switch trigger inputs, something like that. But I went ahead and pinned them all in just in case I use them in the future. You can see I don't have all of them occupied, but they're here, they're accessible. You don't have to pull the dash apart extensively, and you can make changes at any time. So the other side of my bulkhead is right there. That feeds into my expansion module, sensor, 5-volt reference, sensor ground, all the EFan triggers, all the boost control passes through that. So again, that was a nice clean way to keep everything expandable in the future. And I've still got some pins that I can populate on that. I think it was like a 22 pin connector that I used. They offer a couple of different styles. So got that set up and got everything functioning there. So still waiting on finishing this up. This is that 12 position AEM trim pot switch. This is what's going to handle my boost control. I've got to make a panel for it. I just got it temped in right now for testing, but it will sit right in front of the shifter, and a panel that I make to go in this location here, along with a few other switches I'm planning. But this has 12 different positions that represent 0 to 5 volts, and you can basically create custom inputs and outputs in Holley EFI for a ton of features. I just happen to use it for boost control, but there are other things that you can do with this that are based upon the input voltage that trim pot delivers. Again, you've got 12 selectable ranges there that you can set up, and in my case the input correlates to duty cycle output for the MAC valve, which directly translates to how much boost pressure this thing can make. So we've still got to do some testing on that and see what we make at 0, which is hopefully wastegate pressure, and what we make at full trim pot voltage, which is hopefully double wastegate pressure, wastegate spring rating rather. So we'll see here pretty soon. We'll do some testing on that and see how that turns out. So that's pretty much what I've been working on. Wiring is always a little tedious and a little slow, especially if you're trying to do it in a fashion that is clean and organized. So this has taken me a little bit of time here to get this the way that I wanted it, but so far so good. My new sensors are working and communicating on the expansion module. The fans are functioning just like they should. AC's fixed now, so get ready to kind of button the inside of this back up and get a little panel mounted there for my new switches in front of the shifter. Next up for news is I'm going to be swapping. I've got the aluminum spindles on here from Rowan's Rides. They were super nice setup, saved a ton of weight. Well, not a ton, but a substantial amount of weight over the cast iron spindles. But I've had trouble getting the right suspension geometry. I can't get any negative camber. I'm actually running like +1 degree camber on the truck because it's maxed out the most that I can get. can almost sort of see it visually there. That's not doing me any favors in the handling department, so I'm going to go ahead and, you know, bite the bullet and swap on a set of Beltec drop spindles in place of those, because Beltec is what RideTech uses in their kit, and RideTech and a few of the guys I've talked to that run RideTech have had much better luck with the geometry that they're able to achieve. So I'm going to put those on there and send it to the alignment shop and see what we get out of it. Hopefully we get a little bit of negative camber, maybe a degree or two. All of that's going to happen inside a week. I am 1 week away from the next event for the truck. We're going to go out and run a local SCCA solo autocross event in North Florida at the firm. Truck's going to run CAM-T class, and we'll see how it does. I'm out there to test it. You know, I've made a couple changes since the Pro Touring Truck Shootout. We want to test it. Made a couple EFI changes. We want to make sure everything's functioning there, and preps for the next event, which will likely be LS Fest if I can secure some tickets or some registration there. I guess they filled up, and I didn't realize how quickly they filled up and that they limited spots. So I am trying to pick up something secondhand. If anybody knows of anybody that's not going to be able to make it that has a Grand Champion registration, I will buy it from them. I'm trying to get my hands on one so that we can get this thing out there and have some fun with it. That about wraps it up, guys. You know, if you have any questions, comment below. I'll try to keep doing these updates periodically as I can, and you know, look forward to the next one. Talk to you then.